Hello and welcome to episode 4 of the Jak and Daxter Analysis, the series where we take a look at each area of Jak and Daxter and take an in-depth look at what does and doesn't work. If this is the first video in the series that you've seen, I suggest you go back and watch them from the start. I'll link the playlist below. Anyway, last time we took a look at Sentinel Beach, a well put together level designed to be the first real level of the game. This time we're going to be taking a look at the Forbidden Jungle, the next accessible level. So let's get right into it. So, straight from first glance, this level is already a considerable amount more detailed and complex than Sentinel Beach. Just looking from where we first enter the level, we can see about 3 possible paths that we can take to start exploring the level, which is already a step up from the vast openness of Sentinel Beach. This level, like most of the others that come after it, is made up of semi-linear paths that all interconnect to form one big sprawling level, where it's very hard to get lost. In the last level, I said that there was very little threat of dying, and that the level was very big so the player could test their moves out safely with little risk of messing up. In this level, we have a few enemies that will pose a challenge to the player, and we also have instant death pits. On top of that, the level is a lot more condensed, so just testing your moves out here is a lot riskier. At this point, the player should be fairly accustomed to Jak and his moveset, so this shouldn't be too much of a problem. So let's start this off with the enemies. First we have the Babaks, which I talked about in the last video. Then we have the Jungle Fish. These little guys are only in the shallow rivers that run throughout the level. They're slow and easy to avoid and only take a hit to kill. Next is the Jungle Snake. These guys live up in the trees of the level and hide up there until the player walks close to them. When you get close, they drop down from the trees and try to attack you. Sometimes they can be a bit hard to hit because they're skinny, and as they try to bite you, they move around a lot. The trick to these guys is to get in really close and spin. They only take a hit to kill. Lastly, we have the Hopper. These guys can be really annoying. These frog-like enemies can jump really high, higher than Jak when he's punching, so they have a tendency to jump over Jak when you're trying to kill them. The best way to deal with these guys is to either follow the timing of their jumps or use an aerial attack to make sure you don't miss them. There are also these vines scattered about the level, but we'll get back to that later. Now there are 2 other enemies in this level, but I'm going to go more in depth about them in a much later video. Okay, so let's look at the power cells. Unblock the Eco Beam. So if we talked to the mayor back in the village, he asked us to venture into the jungle and fix the Eco Beam that powers the village, as it has been blocked and he isn't sure why, and for that he'll give us a power cell. So to start this mission, we'll have to follow this small path up here to find that the lurkers have redirected the village's Eco Beam to their own machine. The purpose of this thing isn't really known, but we have to climb it and fix the beam. So we climb up it and traverse a few platforms before breaking the mirror that was redirecting the Eco Beam. After that, a tower thing comes out of the ground with a mirror on the top of it which the Eco is reflecting on. Upon investigating the tower, we see some binocular type thingies that let us redirect the Eco Beam to another tower. And this is the gist of the mission. Just run around the level and redirect the Eco Beam to all the towers. There are 6 towers that we need to find and connect, but only 5 that we line up manually. Once we connect them all, the Eco Beam will be directed back to the village onto the big windmill that's atop the mayor's house. So this mission is pretty good. It seems like a bit of a step up from the Unblocked Eco vents from the last area. However, just like that mission, there is one flaw that keeps it from being a great mission. With the Eco vents, my main issue with it was that all the vents were really close together and the mission as a whole was extremely simple. Something I suggested to make it a bit more engaging was to spread the vents out across the level to encourage a bit more exploration. So yes, the towers here are spread across the level, but when we connect a beam, the game shows us a cutscene telling us where the next tower is, dumbing down the sense of exploration quite a bit. If that didn't happen, I think this mission would be great, if a bit simple. Any mission that encourages exploration onto the player, especially in these big levels, is a win in my books. So the next 3 take place right after each other, so I'm going to detail the whole thing as it goes. Get to the top of the temple. This one is a lot of fun. So to start this one off, we need to make our way to this area just across from the temple's entrance. Once there, we encounter some lurkers and a blue eco vent. Once powered up, we make our way to these posts with the lightning marks on them. Since we brought some blue eco to an object with these lightning marks, something is going to happen. In this case, we've caused the fallen bridge to reconstruct so we can reach the temple. So, still powered up with blue eco, we jump across the bridge to the locked door of the temple, which is also open with blue eco. After that, we'll get another cluster of blue eco from a chest and use it to power up a floating platform, which will take us up. After reaching the next level of the temple, we'll obtain another blue eco cluster and activate another 2 platforms. The first one will take us up, where we jump onto another one which takes us to the next level of the temple. Here we find a blue eco vent and a blue eco cluster in its chest and a precursor launcher. This is also the first time in the game that the player will use one. So we power up again, launch further, encounter a Babak and another cluster of blue eco, then a small trampoline that'll take us up to the last stretch of the temple climb. Once we step on this floating platform, it'll activate the other 2 above it at the same time. Then we just ride them up and around the circular part and reach the top with a power cell waiting for us. This one is awesome. The abundance of blue eco the game keeps giving the player really encourages them to make it to the top as fast as they can without running out of blue eco. Pulling this off feels super rewarding as well. What's also awesome about this mission is the amount of ways the blue eco is utilized here. On top of having us move super speedy to get to the top as fast as possible, there's also rebuilding the bridge, opening the door to the temple, activating all the floating platforms, and using the precursor launchers for the first time. It's pretty great. And to top it all off, the view from atop the temple is just fucking gorgeous. Here we can see the rest of the level, but we can also see Samos' hut just past the village, Geyser Rock, and the far off Misty Island, and even the Fire Canyon which links the first hub area to the next one. And if we look in that direction, we can see the Zeppelin which is part of a later mission, the massive structure that's in the precursor basin, and the Blue Sage's hut. And if we look really close, we can see the snowy mountain that we'll be exploring much later in the game. This sort of stuff really makes the world feel massive and like you're a part of it. So yeah, fucking awesome mission. Find the blue vent switch. So immediately after obtaining the last power cell, we'll take an elevator down into the inside of the temple below the rest of the jungle. Here, we have to find the blue vent switch, and once turned on, we'll activate blue eco vents all over the world. So once we have reached the bottom of the temple, we'll see a door to the left and right of us, and a ledge to jump up in front of us. So we make our way up this platform through a linear hallway full of moving platforms. Jumping through all of these, we'll eventually make our way to the switch. Once we climb atop it, we'll receive a power cell, and after that, the switch we're standing on will lower, and the blue eco vents will open. And that's pretty much it for this power cell. While it isn't the most complex mission, or the longest, I think this one is just fine. It feels like the mission is only half done because you still have to escape the temple, and it wouldn't feel right if you were to activate the eco vents without getting a reward, so this one is fine. After activating the eco vents, we power up with the one that was open just next to us and go through some doors to get back to where we started. Now that we've opened the blue eco vents, we can open the door to the left of us. Once opened, we'll see a floating platform that will turn upside down at certain intervals. To get past this, we have to wait for it to be flat side up so we can jump on it. I'm pretty sure this is the only level in the whole game that has these platforms. I'll correct myself if I come across another one. Anyway, after that, we make our way through this short hallway and encounter the boss for the level, the Dark Eco Plant, which is the next power cell. I won't be going over this one in this video. Instead, what I'm going to do is make a whole separate video covering all of the boss fights in detail. So let's just skip ahead. After killing the boss, we get a power cell and use a launcher to exit the temple. Just gonna say, I really love the temple. It really feels like a level within a level. It's so awesome. Anyway, next on the list we have catch 200 pounds of fish. This is one of the few mini games the game has to offer. Here, the fisherman is down by the lower river trying to catch some fish, but to no avail. He offers us a power cell and access to use a speedboat to get to another level if we catch 200 pounds of fish for him. After agreeing, he tells us how to play. The green fish are worth 1 pound, or point, and the yellow ones are worth 5. If we miss 20 pounds of fish, we lose and have to try again. There are also poisonous eels which will cause an instant fail if caught, as it will poison the entire catch of fish. So, it seems simple enough. In reality, it's a bit more difficult. So, the way the minigame works is fish will spawn at the top of the screen and move down towards Jak, and the player will have to move the net so the fish swim into the net. The fish and their placement are always random, so trial and error isn't going to win this, rather just getting good from practice. It's entirely dependent on your reflexes. If the stick is pushed all the way to the side, it'll take roughly a second to reach the opposite side. What this means is the player needs to push the analog stick only slightly to move the net only slightly. And because of the way the fish typically spawn, the player will need to do this a lot, as well as get the net to the opposite side of the river. Luckily, the hitbox for the net is fairly generous, so there are times where fish are moving slightly, but the net will just need to stay in place because of the size of it. Towards the end of the minigame, the speed of the fish spawning is really fast, so the player has to really act fast to not miss any fish or catch a poisonous one. At first, it's pretty easy as the fish are quite slow, but over time the fish get gradually faster. Now, let's address the elephant in the room about this mission, the difficulty. Personally, I don't find it difficult anymore because I've done it countless times and have gotten quite good at it, but for new players, especially younger ones, I can see this proving to be quite hard. So because of the nature of the net, the player has to make very slight adjustments to the stick for the net to make a slight adjustment. This and the sporadic nature of the fish placements is what makes this mission so difficult for some. To make it a bit easier, I would either make the net a bit less sensitive to movement or have the screen shifted up a bit so we have a little bit more time to react to where the fish are spawning. Or maybe both. Or maybe have this mission later in the game so the difficulty is warranted for being late in the game. I know for story reasons this wouldn't be able to happen, but it's a possibility. Something that this mission brings up is the design of Jak and Daxter's missions as a whole. I probably should have gone over this in my village analysis video, but here is fine as well. I'm just an idiot. The game is designed around the idea that if there's ever a mission the player doesn't like, they don't have to do it. There are 101 power cells in the game, and the player only has to collect 72 to complete the game, leaving quite a few the player doesn't have to do. This minigame, of course, being one of them. This would be fine, except for the fact that completion of this minigame gives the player access to an entirely new level, Misty Island. Gating a whole level behind the completion of a minigame that doesn't require the game's core mechanics to beat is a bit harsh, and I can't really forgive the game for that. I'd imagine that there would have been a lot of kids that missed out on an entire level just because they couldn't beat this one minigame, and that's the biggest problem I have with it. A word of advice I'd give for anyone who struggles with this: focus on the top of the screen where the fish are spawning and make adjustments to the net accordingly. This should give you enough time to react and position the net where necessary. Also, just getting a good feel for how the net moves and works. All in all, I think the minigame is fun once you get good at it. It's actually quite challenging, but so satisfying to beat it without missing a single fish. But its difficulty, especially this early in the game, and the fact you need to beat it to unlock a whole area, is the reason I can't give it much of a pass. Just a small thing to note here, which I thought was kind of interesting. So you'd think that we'd be fishing from this direction because the river leads out to the sea this way, but instead we're fishing this way where the river ends. Kinda weird, I don't know why it's like this, but there you go. Follow the canyon to the sea. This is a very simple one. We can do this just after finishing the fishing minigame as well. Simply follow the lower river of the jungle to the end and we get a power cell. Super easy. The only thing this is testing you on is your ability to swim and explore. So with just a tad of exploration, we're awarded a power cell. Open the locked temple door. This one is also simple, but a bit more complex than the last one. So there is a locked door on the outside of the temple. Blue eco is needed to open this door to reveal a power cell. Sounds simple enough, and it is, for the most part. So there's a few ways to do this. The easiest way is to climb the lurker machine that's redirecting the eco beam and power up from the beam, then run over and collect the power cell. But if you've already completed that mission, we can't use the eco beam to power up, so we need to find some blue eco somewhere else. So we can either use the blue eco here at the lower river and use the launcher to launch up to the door and open it that way, or we can grab the blue eco from the vent across from the temple and jump onto this platform right here and run over to the locked door. Either of these two methods still require the player to move fast as to not run out of blue eco, and if the player is only left with these two options, it's up to them to figure out how to get the blue eco to the door. For the most part, it's really simple, but it's a nice little mission that does require some thought and some quick movement, so it's fine. And finally, free 7 scout flies. The Forbidden Jungle is quite an awesome level. The difficulty has risen quite a bit from Sentinel Beach, but not too much for it to be unfair this early on. It's still a good difficulty, except maybe the fish for some. So there are 2 checkpoints here. The first one is right at the start of the level at the bridge, so if you die anywhere in the jungle, this is where you'll respawn. The second one is in the temple where you first start off. Both checkpoints are fine, however, I think it would be a tad better to have one right outside the temple or right across from it. It's not a big deal, but having one there would be nice. This level is also the first use of the precursor launchers, and I gotta say, I love these things. They're simple in concept and to execute, but I love using them, they're so cool. Aside from that, the design of the level is awesome. I love how there are 2 separate rivers, one at the top of the level and one at the bottom. And I love how the bottom one leads out to sea. I also love how dense the foliage is in the first area. My only nitpick is that I wish this was all over the level, but I know that this level in particular was extremely hard to get running on the PS2, having so many things on screen, so it's fine. It's not a flaw, just a matter of taste. I also love the exit for the temple, how you just launch out from underground and come out of this precursor thing with all these platforms. It just looks awesome. The way the bridge to the temple is constructed is also fucking awesome. And the temple itself is fucking awesome, inside and out. Another thing to note, this level also has a few unique songs to it. There's the usual Forbidden Jungle one, and it also changes slightly by adding a couple instruments depending where you are in the level, just like every other level. Then there's also completely different tracks, like when you're fishing or when you're inside the temple. There is one for when you're versing the boss, but that's used a few times throughout the game. So the Forbidden Jungle song is good, it certainly fits the level, but it's nothing special. The fishing song though, that one's awesome. It's so upbeat, it almost sounds like something out of Dark Cloud. I fucking love it. The one that plays inside the temple is also really nice. It sounds quite adventurous and mysterious, but also quite fun. And just like the jungle music, the music in here changes slightly when you're at a certain place, this case being when you're atop the blue vent switch. So Forbidden Jungle is a great area, just difficult enough to be challenging, but not too difficult this early on in the game. The overall look and vibe is great, and the temple is also awesome. I just wish there was more of it. Or at least another temple similar to it to explore in the game. Well, at least Jak 2 has one that is pretty awesome, but it's just not the same. So join me next time where we'll be taking a look at Misty Island. If you like this video, do stuff, I won't tell you what to do. Thanks for watching and I'll see you guys then.